Hello and welcome to the Our Lads Fantasy Football Show, where your fantasy becomes reality. Thanks for joining me, Ryan, Rich Fat Baby McKee, and Sam, the Swagman Wagman, as we dive into the latest trends, insights, and strategies to dominate your fantasy league. Today, we're talking best ball sleepers, rookies to target in Dynasty, discount studs, and players to avoid. So, Sam, how's it going today, my man?
Doing well. Starting to get really back into that, football grind as we come off the NFL draft, and really just glad to be here and ready to talk some best ball.
Absolutely. Have you been doing best ball drafts?
Oh yeah, all season since February.
Yeah, me too. I just did a couple today, so excited to talk about some of your sleepers. I'm going to run a couple by you, names by you, see what you think, and then you can tell me what you're thinking. First name up, I'm going to start at the quarterback position. Gardner Minshew. The current odds on DraftKings Sportsbooks are making Minshew a minus 300 favorite to get the starting nod when the NFL season kicks off. So like him there, higher than he's being drafted. You could stack him with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers. What are your thoughts on Gardner Minshew as a sleeper?
Yeah, Minshew's interesting to me because if you look at their advanced stats between him and Aiden O'Connell, there's really no difference from last year. I think the only thing that people are thinking is that we already saw O'Connell be, just average. And we saw Minshew basically almost drag the Colts to the playoffs by himself. Yeah. I don't think it's lost on people that Minshew was on probably a better team, top to bottom, definitely a better offensive scheme, what he did last year. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he adjusts to the Raiders system, which is now being run by Luke Getsy. There's to be some interesting concepts that he brings over from the Chicago Bears there. I do agree with you and the odds that Minshew is probably going to get the starting nod. I don't think they would have brought him in and paid him $15 million guaranteed in this contract if he wasn't going to be kind of that guy heading into training camp at least. I would say it's probably about a 60-40 chance that he's the starter, in which case he will get the nod there. I don't know if I would call him a sleeper in best ball because he's going to be a guy that's around basically in the last round of your drafts. If you need him to round out your team, yes, but you're probably not going to be wanting him to carry you because he's not going to win you a week. Minshew doesn't carry that 30-35 point upside. It's more, if anything, it's more like a 20 to 25 point and a consistent 15.4 from him.
Yeah, but he is going behind the likes of Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Bo Nix. You can get him in the 20th round right now in Underdog. I feel like has a higher upside than a Russell Wilson or a Daniel Jones even.
He might, but I still think
he might be a sleeper too. But
yeah, I still think we don't know exactly what that Raiders offense is going to look like, and it's going to be really interesting to see. I don't think Minshew brings you much that O'Connell didn't have. Like I like Minshew as a player. I think he's a better quarterback than O'Connell, but I don't think he gives you anything special that we didn't already see, the same level from, Aiden O'Connell last year. Even their spike weeks were pretty similar. Each of their spike weeks was like a 25-point week. So he could definitely be there, at the back end. He's definitely someone that I would consider if I'm running, like a 3 quarterback setup. and not just going with a standard 2-quarterback setup. But I don't think I would want him in there as my other quarterback if I was only running 2.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. So moving on to the running back position, looking at the Saints backfield and Kendre Miller, Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, both older quarterbacks getting up there around 30. Miller has the younger, fresher legs, didn't play a lot last season due to an injury, but looked good in the end of the season. Any thoughts on Miller?
Yeah. Jesus.
Whoa.
Off my desk.
We're blowing up over there.
Just knocked my
You're that excited about Miller.
Yeah, I do actually love Kendre Miller. Was a huge fan of his last year. Was really hoping that while Kamara was suspended for the beginning of the season, that we would see something there. We obviously did not. But coming in, he has the draft capital. The Saints have no reason to not put Miller out there. They drafted him early enough that they would like to see what they have in him. Like you said, Kamara's getting older. Jamal Williams looked pretty toasty last year. So, and I don't think the Saints are anywhere near competing right now. They drafted a tackle in the first round. It's going to be, they're pretty much stating that they're okay kind of fading back. They have a lot of cap issues to address. They don't really have a functioning offense. Michael Thomas is gone now. It's pretty much just Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed there. So I'm really kind of curious what we're going to see from Miller. I think it's really unfair to project him, based on what we saw from him last year. He's going in the triple digits though. If you're running a 0 running back scheme, I wouldn't hesitate about throwing him in there. He could definitely spike. He had some nice, 3-down potential that we saw from him. He had some nice catches, in the preseason and training camp last year. So I like Kendre Miller. I'm willing to put him on my sleepers list for this year. I'm just not exactly sure what we're going to be able to get from him.
Got it. That is fair. All right. Sticking with the running back position, what are your thoughts on Zach Moss in Cincinnati? He was good for the Colts last year. Do we see him putting up any numbers like Joe Mixon put up?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think he could put up better numbers than Joe Mixon did.
Yeah.
Given the fact that, the Bengals drafted Marius Mims, who is going to be their new left tackle of the future. Hopefully, signed Moss to a solid deal. They have Chase Brown there, but Chase Brown profiles is more of a change of pace back than anything. He was more of like, the lightning to Joe Mixon's thunder. And I expect Zach Moss to step right into that thunder role. We definitely saw some solid efficiency from him last year. We saw some below average efficiency from Chase Brown at times while running the football, which just leads me to think that Moss can definitely get in there. He can have the goal line hammer roll. This is going to be a very good offense. So I really do like Zach Moss as a sleeper and where he's going right now. I think he should be going a little bit higher than he is.
Yeah,
he's going in the
eighth round right now. He's going in the 8th round right now in underdogs, around the 94th position, right around the likes of Mostert, Jalen Warren, James Conner. Those guys are definitely going to be in a shared backfield situation, I feel like.
Yeah.
Whereas Moss might get the starting role straight out and be the thumper.
Yeah, I don't see him taking over, the 3rd down role. I think Chase Brown's pretty locked into that role, but I do think, he got a nice nod of encouragement when they traded Joe Mixon away. And I think it's the stage is set for him to kind of assume that role. And he should be a little more efficient than Mixon was in that role last year.
All right. The last name I'm going to give you, and then I'll let you get to some of your names. Which one do I want to give you? I'm going to go with, okay, so this one, DJ Chark. Baby Shark. He is with the Chargers now, and we've got him slotted in behind the likes of Josh Palmer on the depth chart on our lives. So check out our depth charts. We have the most updated depth charts in the realm. Quentin Johnson, Josh Palmer really haven't proven themselves yet. DJ Chark had some great, seasons in Jacksonville. Any thoughts on him getting more work in Los Angeles?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a last round special guy. He's
Yeah.
currently going off at 207 ADP, on underdog, which is pretty comfortably round 18, round 19. He's the only guy who has 1,000-yard season on that team. I mean, if that's what you have going for you,
Yeah.
that's fine. I think he's probably a better version of what they wanted Quentin Johnston to be. I think Quentin Johnston should be nervous that they signed DJ Chark. They didn't really draft anybody, that could take the reins there besides Brendan Rice, who also does basically the same thing that Chark and Quentin Johnston do. But, I think there's as good a chance as Chark to provide some spike, potential. It'll be interesting to see if all of his injuries hold up. That's been the headache for him over his NFL career so far. But outside of Josh Palmer, there is nobody reliable in this wide receiver room to catch passes from Justin Herbert. So he has that going for him. We will see what they're able to do. I think the Chargers will be throwing plenty. So if Chark's able to stay healthy, definitely like him as, kind of a last round dart throw.
Great. Love that. All right. Just a quick reminder, if you are live in the chat, go ahead and leave some comments for Sam and I. We'll go ahead and answer your questions if you have anything burning on your mind. Also, if you're listening on our podcast stream, please subscribe and also give us a nice comment if you wouldn't mind rating and reviewing. We are a brand new podcast stream, Our Lads Football. Thanks very much. Okay. So, Sam, what are some sleepers that you're looking at in best ball?
Well, I think the most important one that I like to look at is, it's all dependent on how you view the Packers wide receiver room.
Okay,
I think there's
it's a crowded mess right now.
Yeah, it definitely is, and that's why it's so attainable to find some sleepers there. Dontavian Wicks definitely cracks that list of sleepers for me. He's currently going off at wide receiver 65 on underdog. You can get him all the way into the 140s. So I really like what we saw from Wicks in kind of a shorter time span from last year. Showed a potential to be a really nice, solid deep threat, guy who could, pass his longest catch prop on any given week as a handful of people found out. And, whatever happens with Christian Watson, I think his hamstrings are always good and soft tissue are always going to give him some sort of issue. So it'll be nice for Wicks to stay there. You have Jaden Reed solidified in there. Romeo Doubs is kind of that X guy, but Wicks definitely fits the bill as kind of like a flanker and a Z role wide receiver that could really stretch the field for the Packers and Jordan Love. So I really like his potential to get some spike weeks in there at wide receiver 65 to start.
Yeah, that is where is he going in? I mean, that's like a end of your draft dart throw, right?
Yeah, he's wide or ADP 143. So
all right,
around the 12th, 13th round.
12th, 13th round. Got it.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, like him there. What else do you have?
Yeah, so another guy I pulled out, and if I can find him, was Jerome Ford. And the Browns running back situation is really interesting because when we saw Nick Chubb go down last year, we all thought it was career-threatening level injury from just the grotesque way we saw his knee bend inwards that no knee should ever bend that way. He did tear his MCL. He had issues with the ACL as well. So I know he had 2 procedures, one on the MCL, one on the ACL later on. They never really disclosed how bad the ACL injury was. It was significant enough to need a procedure. So, he could still be reeling from the effects of that. Wouldn't shock me if he started the year on the PUP list, possibly missed, somewhere around 6 to 10 games.
I just saw an article projecting that Chubb will miss half the season.
Yeah, I would not be shocked with that at all. I mean, you got Ford going off the board at RB 42. Chubb's going off the board a couple spots before him, but I would much rather prefer Jerome Ford in this situation. Ford played well, unspectacular last year, but he ran the ball well. He had a few breakaway runs that we saw. He's very adept at catching the football. there. This is going to be a Browns team that needs kind of, a surge of some sort from their offense after they really did not look good in a lot of facets last year. Sean Watson looked off, but he's another year off of that shoulder issue. So I do think Ford's going to come in and be the guy for them, at least to start the season, possibly all the way through the season. And he has a 3-down skill set. So I really like if you're kind of in the weeds in the, early on the triple digits in your 10th, 11th, 12th rounds, Ford is an excellent play for people.
What are your thoughts on drafting both Ford and Chubb, just kind of shoring up the Browns backfield? That's a kind of a expensive right in the 12th round or whatever that you have to do it, 11th, 12th round.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of an expensive play. Chubb's currently going off the board at wide receiver or RB32. I don't love the price. I think there's guys around him that I would rather have. I would rather have Austin Eckler over him almost every single day, given the situation that Eckler is going to be walking into where he doesn't need to, assume all of the rushing load and he'll be able to sit back and be his normal receiving weapon. I would much rather him.
Eckler I have down on our third segment, discount studs potentially to look at. So,
yeah. So we can save him. We can save him for talking about that. I'm looking at other guys in that RB 30 to 35 range. You have Trey Benson, who's sitting right there, RB 30. I think he's probably a better ad at that spot than Nick Chubb, given the fact that, he has the draft capital push to, cut into James Conner's workload. Devin Singletary is right there. There's nobody else in that Giants backfield. We know that Dable will want to run the football to try and establish the pass, take some heat off of Daniel Jones. So Devin Singletary is there. He has a history of being somewhat efficient. Gus Edwards is there. He could be the 2022 version of James Conner, where he gets 700 yards and 15 rushing touchdowns. That wouldn't. I don't think that would surprise anybody, given the type of back that he is. So all of these guys are in much better spots than Chubb, I think, right now. They're not. None of them are projected to miss 10 games potentially. And none of them are going to cost you, a 10th or 11th round pick. So in answer to your question, I think I would probably pass on taking both Browns running backs. I don't think you're gaining anything there. I think you're better off making a stand one way or the other on which one you think will have more of a featured role when both are in the backfield. I just think that's going to be Ford, because I think Chubb really was close to getting cut this summer to avoid the Browns paying him, I think it was $11 million guaranteed when that told, post June 1. And I think they worked out a resolution to that contract. So I think Chubb was really close to getting cut. I think that speaks to how, severe his injury and rehab process ended up being. And I don't want anything to do with it right now.
All right. So Chubb, maybe one of those names that you just want to stay away from. We have stayaways coming up later in the show. All right. We're wrapped up on the best ball sleepers. Sam, wanted to give you an opportunity to plug anything you'd like to plug. This is we're kind of making a spot for advertising on this show, but we have no ads yet. So this could just be a Sam ad or anything you're working on. Where can people find you? What would you like to plug?
Well, you guys can always find me on Twitter at Swagman95. I yell about football and golf almost all of the time. If I'm ever yelling about anything else, it's probably pickleball, which everyone should love if your name's not Pete Overzet. So, I'm always on Twitter yelling about sports, and you can find all of my written content currently over at Football Guys. I have a few things I'm working on over there. I am working on an Anthony Richardson player spotlight, which is supposed to come out either this week or beginning of next week for them, which is going to be one of my favorite articles I've written. I've been looking forward to it pretty much for the last 3 months.
Nice.
Ever since I decided who I wanted to write some articles on this offseason. So he's definitely on there. I'll be doing some, betting and player prop season-long previews for Football Guys as well. Those will be out over the next month or so as some sports books look to hang some more lines. And then you can catch all of my golf content over on Betting Pros right now. I'll be putting out some pieces on the PGA Championship this week as well.
Awesome. All right. Moving on to rookies to target in Dynasty. I'm going to start off just at the top. What are your thoughts here on Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels in fantasy? Obviously, Jaden Daniels has the running upside, but I think we got to worry about what that does to his body. He's a slender man, and definitely might go the way of RG3 and not being able to play a long time. I hate to project injuries with players, but certainly something to keep in mind when drafting long-term in Dynasty. Who do you like more?
Yeah, I definitely see that there's some inherent risk, given precedent and what we've seen over the course of the last decade or so in running quarterbacks. But I don't think it's just about that as to why, the vast majority of the industry has Caleb ranked ahead. I think Caleb's just a better quarterback. He's going into a much better offense. There's kind of a cultural reset in Chicago. And we saw this with Justin Fields when he entered into Hallis Hall 3 or 4 years ago. Everyone was kind of just overjoyed, at the possibility of a brand new Bears franchise quarterback and all of the upside he could bring. Except this time there's a real offense that the Bears have put around Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze taken at 9th overall, Keenan Allen acquired from the Chargers this offseason, DJ Moore. You have a kind of retooled offensive line. You have a defense that was pretty underrated last year and got a little bit better. So there's a lot of weapons for Caleb to play with. And that's why I have him ranked as my number one quarterback. And also Caleb can run. Caleb can go off script and scramble out of the pocket. We saw him do it plenty in Lincoln Riley's system at USC. I think in Shane Waldron's system in Chicago. There will be some room for that as well. And I think Waldron's going to run a lot of concepts that are pretty helpful for Caleb's development, giving them some easy passing routes to go ahead and target. So I have Williams pretty comfortably ahead of Jaden Daniels there,
okay,
as my QB1. And I would be happy starting any draft with Caleb Williams in Dynasty.
Absolutely. Love that. That's where and obviously it matters what your team needs are, how early you're going to take a quarterback in Dynasty. Are you starting a team? Are you adding to a team that you've already had? Are you in a 2-quarterback league or not? So things to keep in mind. But where are you with Caleb versus like the Marvin Harrison Juniors of the world, Malik Neighbors? Where are you taking him?
I think if it's super flex, you still have to go Caleb. Yeah. I definitely think you can go Harrison. Like if you're just absolutely stacked with quarterbacks and you don't need any quarterbacks, go ahead and take Marvin Harrison. He's probably the best player that came out of the draft this year, offensive or defensive. He's just that good. The pedigree is there. Everything is there. He's about as perfect.
On,
I know you were psyched about that.
I'm ready for Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything you can put on him that's a flaw. Maybe it's that he's not like a supreme burner, but he has good long speed, so that mitigates that. So there's really nothing you can do to, cry over Harrison at all. He's as perfect a wide receiver prospect as you're going to get. So I'm perfectly fine with him. He's my pretty consensus 102 in rookie drafts. And I flip-flop between Neighbors and Jaden Daniels at 103 and 104. I think you could go in either direction there. I think Neighbors is one of those prospects that can easily trump his situation. Even in a place like the Giants, I think he's going to command 125, 130 targets immediately. Year one, he has extremely high potential to be the best wide receiver in this draft by a long shot. I think it's just going to be, the scheme fit with him. I think Dable's going to do really well designing some concepts around him. And I think he's going to get a ton of volume year one. So
awesome. All right. What are some names that you have down as rookies to target for Dynasty?
Yeah. So I typically go towards like the second round of rookie drafts when talking about this, since the first round's pretty clear cut. After the first group, you have, the quarterbacks, you have May and McCarthy, and then, the group after that is like any order of Jonathan Brooks, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, and, like Lad McConkey and Bo Nix. And that's all fine. I think all
Trey
those guys,
Benson, maybe.
Yeah, early second round. But I think there's a lot of guys that are definitely going, in that late second, early third range that are really good. And I've locked on to like all of these 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end that I really love. So I'll start with the wide receivers. The first one I want to throw out is Jermaine Burton. 3rd round pick now on the Cincinnati Bengals as their de facto wide receiver 3. Played both inside and out at Alabama and Georgia, and pissed off every coach at Alabama and Georgia. So not exactly the best character development that we've seen. I'm sure plenty of people are going to be a little bit scared off by that fact after witnessing the Rashee Rice saga that's gone on this offseason for the last month and a half. But Burton brings a lot of potential, star power in his routes. Remember, he played for 2 of the best programs in the country, excelled at both programs, albeit, in a little bit of a limited role. Like I said, played both inside and out, spent most of his last year at Alabama on the outside, though at Georgia, he did play a little bit of slot. He could play either position in the NFL. I think he's best suited as like kind of a Z flanker out there. Jamar Chase has spoken about wanting to play the slot a little bit more. We know he's not going anywhere. And T. Higgins is pretty clearly the X wide receiver of this team, as long as he is on this team. So I think Burton fits pretty well into that, that Z flanker role. He's very speedy, ran a 4.41 at the 40-yard dash and had, a good RAS score. It's just that character development that caused him to slip. I think a lot of people were saying that he should have been, kind of a 2nd-round pick purely based on talent. I saw people who had him up as their wide receiver 4 in this class. Before the draft went off. So, and I was really high on him.
And our lads, we had him ranked above where he went. We had him ranked as like a 2nd-round pick. Also, looking at Dynasty long term, T. Higgins definitely seems like this is his last year in Cincinnati. So that's going to bump up Burton past, in the 2025 season. Could be a breakout season for him if T. Higgins goes ahead and moves on.
Yeah, and I do think like this obviously Brian Callahan is now gone, but we're going to see how the new offensive coordinator kind of steps in and makes his mark on this Cincinnati Bengals offense. But they ran plenty of, 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers over the past several seasons. Tyler Boyd fit in really well there in the slot. He had, a bunch of, solid seasons. So I do think Burton could come in and contribute immediately, whether that's from the slot where I think he will probably start, or the Z where I think he will eventually end up. I think he could be a nice, solid, deep threat for this team. He could be a red zone weapon for them, on a team that's been a little bit devoid of them in the past few years. I definitely see him playing a solid role. I think this is a terrific landing spot for him. If he can just kind of stay out of trouble, keep things quiet, and, really kind of play into that underdog mentality, I think he'll be a really, really solid rookie.
All right, great. What's the next name on your list?
So my next name is Javon Baker. Went to the Patriots, played his college ball at UCF, went to the Patriots in the 4th round. They drafted 2 wide receivers in this draft. They got Washington's Jalen Polk in the 2nd round at 37th overall, and then Baker, in the middle of the 4th round there. I really like Baker as a prospect. He's another guy that could profile as kind of a deep weapon for them. I think getting Drake May as many weapons as he possibly can get is going to be really good. But I also could see Baker immediately being a possession receiver from day one for the Patriots. He was really solid on his route running, really consistent there. I think you have 2 guys in Polk and Baker that play very similar positions. I think Polk is a little bit faster, so I can see him playing more of a Z role and, kind of flanker deep threat. And you see Baker play more of like an X position receiver or possession receiver, while Demario Douglas mans that slot role to perfection. I think Douglas is the true target earner of this Patriots offense, but definitely don't sleep on Baker to perform kind of right away and get some targets immediately. Whether it's Jacoby Brissett that starts or Drake May that starts, I've heard some people say that
Probably
May could
looks like
sit for a
Brissett,
couple
right?
months. Yeah, I
that's
could
where I'd
see
be
that
heading.
with a new coach as well. We could definitely see them be a little bit cautious, not rush May along too much. There's been some worry over May's mechanics as well. I'm sure that the Patriots will want to kind of figure out and fix a little bit and mold to their standards. So I do think Baker could meld really well with whatever quarterback is throwing him the ball right away. I think he's a day one starter for the Patriots.
Awesome. Yeah, agree with that 100%. Next name on your list.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the tight end now. Ben Sinnott from the Washington Commanders.
I
Really interesting
Ben
pick.
Sinnott appearance on the show. That's exciting.
Really interesting pick. Was very, very productive in college. I think he had over 700 yards in his final season last year. Tight end 2 of this draft, second round pick. Definitely no Brock Bowers in terms of his potential and target, but easy mover, 6'6", 250, pretty prototypical size for the position. Really like what he brings to the table in terms of what he's able to do kind of just immediately there. No more Logan Thomas there. And again, with Jaden Daniels entrenched as the new face of the franchise, got to get the man some weapons there. You have Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson has really not lived up to his potential through 2 seasons. You can argue that Terry McLaurin hasn't lived up to his potential outside of kind of being that consistent wide receiver 2, possession receiver with some downfield ability. Sinnott has a chance to really step in and not only be a consistent target earner, he could run routes out of the slot, be like a really big slot for the Commanders, as well as playing the tight end role, the standard inline. I think he does both really well. He's a pretty easy blocker. Doesn't mess up too much on his pass protections there. So could easily see him getting some early playing time from that. But I do think Sinnott is the best wide receiver.
He's currently behind Zach Ertz on the depth chart.
I'm not worried about that.
But yeah, that's what I wouldn't worry about that much either. As a Cardinals fan, Ertz started to look washed by the end of his tenure there. Got beat
makes
out.
Me sad.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. I mean, he was a great player and great fantasy provider for a lot of years. But yeah, looks to be at the end of his career. Cardinals moved on from him once McBride started stepping up. So I do think Sinnott can step up and take the starting role there.
Yeah. Talking about McBride, honestly, I see a lot of McBride in Sinnott's game as well. Remember, McBride started out slow as well, but it's not uncommon to see these tight ends take a year or 2 before they really, get their roles fleshed out. We could see Ertz, take a lot of a mentorship role to Sinnott the same way he did McBride during their Cardinals tenure there. So I do like Sinnott to come and have a great year. I don't think he's going to win you any weeks right now, but he could definitely get there going forward.
Got it. All right. We're wrapping up the Dynasty part of this conversation. Got a quick ad read here. Are you looking for the ultimate NFL resource to stay ahead of the game? Look no further than Our Lads depth charts. With meticulously curated, up-to-the-date information on every NFL team, Our Lads provides the most comprehensive and accurate depth charts available. Whether you're a diehard fan, fantasy football enthusiast, a gambler, or an analyst, Our Lads depth charts offers valuable insights into our player positions, injury, and performance. Stay informed and elevate your football IQ with Our Lads. Check it out. You can also sign up. We have a test run of our new Our Lads depth chart spreadsheet. Every time it gets updated, we do send out an alert. So if you want to be added to that, send us an email at team@ourlads.com and we will hook you up with that. Moving on to our discount studs. We already mentioned Austin Eckler. He is in Washington now. We talked a little bit about Washington's offense just right now with Sinnott. But he'll be splitting carries with Brian Robinson Jr. probably, but could be a more explosive offense than people think with Jaden Daniels there. Where are you with Austin Eckler as a discount stud?
I do think that Eckler is definitely, a discount stud. And, I'm flashing back to the early days in Los Angeles where Eckler didn't have to do everything and had, kind of like, guys around him that could really take some of the bulk of that rushing work, away from him and not beat his body up, kind of like we've seen the last couple of years from Eckler. And he definitely gets a player like that in Brian Robinson Jr. He's 230 pounds, 6'2". He's a bruiser. That's exactly what Brian Robinson is, what he's been his entire career. So now Eckler comes over
getting shot in the leg. That tells you all you need to know about what kind of bruiser he is.
Yeah. So now Eckler comes in to Washington, not expected to be the starter by any means. He could be a complimentary piece, and that's not going to be great for his fantasy value. We're not going to see him scoring, 15 touchdowns again anytime soon, but we could definitely see him snake 100 to 150 carries away from, Brian Robinson. And I expect him to get 90% of the receiving work. That's his bread and butter. That's always been his bread and butter. If we get 600 yards and 6 touchdowns out of Eckler from receiving, and we get, 120 carries for like 600 yards and, another 4 or 5 TDs, that's an RB2 level season from Eckler. And it's an automatic value smash play in best ball and in fantasy drafts. So I'm all aboard on Eckler there.
Love it. Okay, going ahead of Eckler a couple of rounds even, but right around the same spot as you can get a Zach Moss or Mostert or Jonathan Brooks, Tony Pollard. All right, he was a number 1 round draft pick last year. Is slipping all the way to between the 6th and 8th round right now. He seems to be the head guy with the Titans with Tajay Spears as the backup. What are we thinking on Pollard as a discount stud here?
Yeah, I think Pollard's a guy that you're going to want to start your 0 running back drafts with, in that 8th round, 7th, 8th round. I think he's the kind of guy that could do exactly what you said. He could take the bulk of the rushing work. And can we, let Spears take the bulk of the receiving work? We saw exactly what happens to Tony Pollard when he had to bulk up and take the bulk of that rushing work, along with the receiving work that made him so special a couple years ago. And it drastically slowed him down. He lost a lot of agility with, coming along with that strength training. And it really showed. He was as close to a fantasy football bust as it gets. Yeah. For fantasy managers, a lot of 8-point, 9-point, 10-point weeks from him. And we were expecting 15, 16, 17 points from him. So definitely not great there. Goes to a situation in Tennessee now where Brian Callahan will call the shots. At least we got an offensive coordinator who called a nice offense in Cincinnati. So I do like that. I like the fact that Tennessee is starting to get their offensive line together a lot. We know what Pollard can do with the solid O-line behind him. And then the offense is really starting to shape up and get together. I think that, teams aren't going to sell out to stop the run and force Levis to throw when they have Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Chico Okonkwo there. So these are all, legitimate, receiving weapons that can damage you. So I don't think teams are going to treat the Titans like they did last year and load the box up like they did against Derrick Henry. Mind you, Derrick Henry still destroyed loaded boxes because that's what Derrick Henry does. Tony Pollard is not that kind of guy. At least we haven't seen that. No. I do think Spears plays a pretty solid role in this backfield. I think he sees at least 125, 150 carries. The bulk of the receiving
just like
work.
we talked about with Eckler, we've seen Pollard when he doesn't have to do everything, and he's better. He's just a better. We saw him try to do everything in Dallas, as you mentioned, close to a fantasy bust without maybe being a fantasy bust as possible. If you took him in the first round, definitely disappointed. But now you might be able to get him at a substantial discount, with a lot of people probably avoiding him if they drafted him last year.
It will be interesting to see how he goes, and handles being the main rushing back. That was the issue that we had with him last year. We didn't have an issue with the receiving game. Has never been an issue for Pollard. He's been very efficient, very solid in the receiving game. It was the rushing game that was the problem last year, and he never handled a substantial rushing role before. So I do worry about him, being the guy to handle that rushing role. When he only had like a 3.8 yards per carry average last year.
Mm-hmm.
I could look up his efficiency stats right now on Player Profiler. They were not great. But and Spears is a much better pass catching back. We saw him be downright explosive out of the backfield with the ball last year. He had a few 65+ yard touchdowns scores as well through the air. So I'm pretty confident that Pollard is going to see about 65% of the carries, but might only see 35% of the targets, and Spears will take the other half and quarter of that. So it will be interesting to see how Pollard handles that. I don't hate it, but I think there are some better options in that range.
All right, give me some better options than Pollard.
In that range, I love Zamir White at RB21. About 9 picks off the board before Pollard steps into a situation where he will be the undisputed rushing back. Some really, really solid efficiency numbers last year, rushing multiple 100+ yard games behind an offensive line that was not great. Obviously Josh Jacobs is now gone. He's got that, he doesn't have to look over his shoulder. New head coach, new offensive coordinator. The Bears had a pretty solid rushing game last year under Luke Getsy. I'm excited to see what kind of concepts he drills up for Zamir White now. Obviously, having Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer be able to block for you is also going to be really fun. And I do think when Minshew at the helm or Aiden O'Connell, I think they'll look to run the ball just as much there. So I love Zamir White there. In that same range, I still love James Conner. Like, I can't help but love James Conner at RB27. All the guy does is get disrespected. Had another 1,000-yard season. Or I think it was actually his first 1,000-yard season last year. 1,040 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 27 catches. So I still love James Conner, and I do think Benson's going to work his way in, but I think he'll be working his way in more of a change of pace than people think there. I don't think Pollard or Connor's ready to give up any work if he doesn't have to just yet. It's going to be a much better offense, with a fully healthy Kyler, Marvin Harrison there, Trey McBride there. So I do love him. And I also think Jaylen Warren's going to be really good. I think this might actually be the year we see Jaylen Warren.
This is going to be finally the breakout season for Jaylen Warren.
It's make or break. So him and Harris are both in that 23 to 26 range. I think Warren's the more explosive back. Comfortable doing this again, where we take Jaylen Warren just because the efficiency numbers, the explosivity numbers, his ability to basically do everything and still run the ball. I think he's going to be a nice solid value pick in that range. All of those guys I would have ranked marginally above Tony Pollard.
Got it. Yeah. Well, Bob Fitzgerald agrees with you here on not loving Pollard. Why wouldn't Spears see more carries than Pollard? Pollard couldn't make it on an explosive Dallas offense, while Spears is younger and more productive behind an inferior O-line. I mean, that's more or less what you said. You said you do like Spears to take plenty of that work.
Yeah, I think Spears is going to handle at least 35-40% of the carries. I think it's possible he sees more. I think it depends how Pollard looks out of the gate there. He's on a 3-year contract, but Spears was a highly picked rookie, day 2 draft capital. It seems the team really likes him and used him plenty in the second half of last season. I think it'll be interesting to see how Brian Callahan uses him.
Yeah. All right. Any discount studs at other positions besides running back?
Let's see here. Yes, I do have one. And it's an interesting one.
Here we go. All
Off
right.
the Rashi Rice, probable incoming suspension. I think at this point,
Yeah,
with
seems
about
like
4 or 5 stories, it seems like we're going to have a suspension of some length. I won't speculate. I am not a lawyer. I've never been close to being a lawyer.
Me neither.
And so I do think he ends up getting somewhere in that, 4 to 8 game range, though, as things stand right now. And that's a perfect reason that Hollywood Brown would be able to take over this wide receivers room for the Chiefs here. I mean, Travis Kelce keeps getting older. They paid, decent draft capital to come up and snag Hollywood Brown, for their team. And I think this is the best wide receiver since Tyreek Hill that Patrick Mahomes has worked with. And I'm not sure it's very close. They did draft Xavier Worthy, but I do expect Worthy to, have a little bit of a transition period as he gets to the NFL there, coming from that Big 12 offense in Texas. Meanwhile, Hollywood Brown's, been crushing it, relatively, so to speak. And I love getting him as my wide receiver 35 on Underdog. I have him placed almost 10 spots higher at wide receiver 26 in my Football Guys rankings, which will be coming out in several weeks. And Hollywood is reliable. That's more than I can say for any Chiefs wide receiver that has stepped through the doors on the Arrowhead Field since Tyreek Hill left. So he's reliable, and I think he's still explosive enough that he could be an absolute breakout wide receiver for this Kansas City Chiefs team. With Mahomes, his possibilities are nearly endless. I could see him easily cracking 1,000 yards this year.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, the most reliable receiver that Mahomes has had since maybe Tyreek Hill has been there. And, Xavier Worthy got comparisons to Hollywood Brown as he was coming into the draft. So if you already have the more experienced guy there, I could definitely see him stepping up, taking the wide receiver 1 role while Worthy gets all the kinks worked out in the NFL. Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to wrap up the discount studs section and quick ad read. Hey, yes, you. Are you tired of seeing the same old boring ads? Well, spice up your life with your ad here. That's right. You can get your ad right here. It's the ad you never knew you needed, but now you can't live without. Be the envy of all your friends and neighbors. Get your ad here. All right. Moving to our final segment, we have stayaways, players you wouldn't touch. I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick name up top that I wouldn't touch. He's a discount because of the injury history, but there's a reason he's a discount. J.K. Dobbins. They have him slotted in as the number 1 Chargers running back. I would not touch him in any round. I feel like he's just an injury waiting to happen. And they have Gus Edwards and Kamani Vidal that people sound pretty excited about. Are you with me on J.K. Dobbins?
Yeah, I don't think that I didn't actually know that they were listing J.K. Dobbins as the starter. I don't think he's ever been like the presumed starter. All I've heard is Gus Edwards since they signed him was the presumed starter for the Chargers there. Edwards fits Jim Harbaugh's, philosophy on running backs to a T. Look at who he just left in Michigan, Blake Corum, 5'8", 230. Gus Edwards is like 6'1", 240. Like he's an absolute perfect Harbaugh smash mouth football player. Dobbins fits more as, a change of pace guy. 2 Achilles tears and an ACL tear. Just absolute mess of injuries for Dobbins. I love Dobbins, but at this point, I can't ignore that he clearly, has an issue staying healthy at this point. I don't think his fantasy value is going to be there. So, yeah, I would absolutely think that Dobbins is definitely a stay away.
Yeah. Some other players that I would stay away from that I'm looking at right now is I'm looking at the Jets and another injury risk, Mike Williams. Can't stay healthy for a full season. I've been burned by him too many times in fantasy. He's going late, but I still don't like it. And with that, Malachi Corey, we've never seen Rodgers really connect with a rookie. So I'm going to stay away from both of those players on the Jets. Where are you at with the Jets wide receiver room?
I will start with Corley by saying whenever a general manager refers to a rookie, publicly as raw at route running, that never inspires confidence in me. Even when that rookie is staying in Aaron Rodgers' guest house like Corley is, it's not there for me. With Corley, he was viewed as a very raw prospect coming into the draft. I walk out of the draft kind of feeling the same way. If it happens, it probably isn't this year. Everyone's drawing comparisons to Deebo Samuel without really acknowledging that Deebo also was raw as, a receiver and still only has realistically one solid wide receiver season in 5 years. So I'm not quite there on Corley just yet. However, I will always be on Mike Williams. I just can't help myself. I love Mike Williams, always have. I've always been, a big Mike truther ever since he came into the league with a neck injury. So, that's where I was. I was drafting the guy with the broken neck 8 months prior as a rookie. I will be drafting him until he retires from the NFL. It'll kill me. It'll kill me one of these days, but I will continue to draft Mike Williams. I just don't see anybody else there. What's his name? Cannot play football. Oh God, why can't I remember who the other old Packers wide receiver is?
We're talking about Alan Lazard.
Lazard. Alan Lazard can't catch a football and move at the same time. Like he's just unable to do it. So there's got to be something to get there.
Once Rodgers went down last year, he was dead. But with Rodgers back, I don't know. Can he revive us? Can Lazard be like anything that he was on the Packers?
No, I think Mike Williams is just a better version of him.
All right.
More injury proneness, but like more actual talent. So I would go with Mike Williams, and the discount is fine for me.
Before we get to the next name on your list for stayaways, we have a quick question from Vito. I have Pickens, Reed, Deontay, MHGA, London, Baker, and Corley at wide receiver. I was offered Keenan Allen and a second round pick for Pickens. Should I accept?
No, I think you're fine with Pickens. I think Keenan Allen is probably a couple years away from retirement. If that, I think he went to the Bears to get a chance to play with Caleb Williams for a couple of years and then kind of hang it up. And I think Pickens is just getting in there. I once said that George Pickens was the most talented wide receiver in his draft class, and it wasn't particularly close to me when I watched game film of Pickens from Georgia. And I would still probably stand by that take that he's more talented than Garrett Wilson. He's more talented than Drake London. Just on a pure talent football playing perspective, that guy can do it all. And I wouldn't be willing to move off of him for Keenan Allen, who I think is in the end stages of his career. And I also don't think you need, a consistent high-level producer right now. You have Marvin Harrison. You have Drake London.
Yeah, he has a pretty
Jaden Reed and Deontay Johnson will be kind of target hogs. I like Javon Baker. But I think you have two studs with London and Marvin Harrison. I think Pickens is a really solid third option for you. I would probably stay on the Pickens side there.
Awesome. All right. Who is the next name on your stay away list?
Yeah. So the next name on my stay away list is most likely going to be Kenneth Walker, who is currently RB16 on Underdog. Yep. RB16 on Underdog, mid 5th round pick at this point. And I've never gotten there with him. And I got there, I understood it less when they took Zach Charbonnet in the second round last year as well. I just think that running back room is not leaning one way or the other. I think Charbonnet could definitely steal a lot of carries from Kenneth Walker this year as well. I mean, he Walker already didn't play that well last year. Charbonnet had 108 carries last year. I could see him easily having 150 to 175 this year as they work to take a little bit more pressure off of Kenneth Walker. I think that's a true committee backfield.
Mm-hmm.
No one way or another lean there. So around RB16 price tag on Kenneth Walker is just too expensive for me.
All right. Got it. Staying away from Kenneth Walker. What's your next name on your list?
Yeah. So the last name that I have on my list is going to be a little bit of an unpopular one because I know how much everybody loves him.
All right. Get ready for some heat.
I'm fading CJ Stroud at QB5.
Really? Wow. A lot of love for CJ Stroud. You're going the opposite
and
way.
why wouldn't there be?
Yeah,
why wouldn't there be a lot of love for CJ Stroud coming off, a very, very popular offensive rookie of the year season, 4,000 plus yards, almost 30 touchdowns, added Stephon Diggs this offseason. There's a lot to love there. And his offensive coordinator stayed, Bobby Slowick stayed. So there's a lot to love there with CJ Stroud. What I struggle with is that he has already hit his ceiling as a fantasy quarterback. He doesn't offer you a lot of rushing upside. He only ran for 167 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. He had only 5 interceptions. There might be a little bit of, regression to a different mean there, given that this is going to be year 2 of the Texans system. Teams will have a full year of defensive game film to game plan for. I think a lot of people were taken surprised by Stroud's ability to really kind of bomb it deep last year. Mm-hmm. And I also just think that there's going to be, other quarterbacks that come up from the depths to sneak into that spot. I think if you're drafting Stroud at 5, there's really not much higher that he can go. Josh Allen is there at 1 or 2. Jalen Hurts is there at 1 or 2. Lamar Jackson is there as probably a top 3, top 4 option. Patrick Mahomes has to be in that conversation, for a top 4 quarterback. And then you have Stroud sitting on this outside bubble with guys like Anthony Richardson, guys like Kyler Murray. So these are all guys that could really have solid fantasy seasons. Let's not forget about the rookies either. Jaden Daniels could have, a really solid rookie season if we believe any of the hype there. So all of these guys Jordan Love is still there as, a top 8 guy that could possibly see a little bit of a ceiling play. All of these guys I would be more comfortable with swinging on their upside and potential further down the board than I would be on Stroud in the 4th round, specifically because we already know what Stroud is going to give you. There's no intrigue there. There's no extra oomph that I think we're going to get. I think we're just going to see more of a committee at the wide receiver position. I don't think there's going to be any true wide receiver 1 like there was last year with Nico Collins. I think all of Diggs, Collins, and Tank Dell will be pretty evenly spaced out in terms of target share. That we might just all see them get around 25% target share, and that's the bulk of your passing offense. But I don't think Diggs getting added to this team gives you a secret level of upside to CJ Stroud that we didn't already see last year. And I do think he's kind of topped out at this point, especially for redraft. I think I would much rather have, a guy like Anthony Richardson there. And Anthony Richardson is currently my QB5 for redraft this year. All right.
We are going to wrap up now. Sam, tell people where they can find you one last time.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Swagman95, yelling about football, yelling about golf, sometimes yelling about pickleball, but mostly yelling about football and golf. All of my content lives at Football Guys, and I will see you guys out there on the best ball streets.
Yeah, great. And you can follow me on Twitter at the Ryan McKee. We will be back on Wednesday with a live stream. We're going to be doing a gambling live stream with Jason Gold and Steffi Smalls right here on the Our Lads Football channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as we're on all the podcast apps as well. So make sure to check out our podcast. It'll just be an audio version of this show. And thanks again. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Come.